Hello and welcome back to the AWE podcast.
Hello.
So, yes, we talk about resilience today. Last week we sort of cued you in, right, towards the next episode being resilience. And this is a big one, right? Because it's sort of this abstract concept, I think, a lot of times, right? What does resilience mean? I think a lot of us can put a definition together about it, but it really makes me think of a time when or multiple times when I've worked with clients who have had just terrible trauma, but there's this one notable client that comes to mind when I'm talking about it, and this person had gone through just an unfathomable amount of trauma. There are times when the trauma that we hear about it can be so severe that we just question, could have this really happened? Mm-hmm. And to know and to look into people's eyes and faces and just to know that it did happen is disheartening. But one of the things, and our clients, I know my clients for sure, and your clients too, Lashana, are some of the strongest people we work with.
Absolutely.
And that I've met, really.
Yes.
And it's because they have this beautiful resilience about them, right?
Yeah.
Especially when they get to that point when they understand how resilient they are.
Yeah.
And this client had gotten there prior to even coming to see me, but wanted to kind of work through some things and learn some more tools and coping strategies and things like that to continue to grow in their journey. But with this unfathomable, awful trauma, I asked the client, like, how are you sitting in the chair across from me right now, having faced all this awful stuff? And they said, I'm grateful. And my jaw kind of hit the floor. I'm like, how? Right? Right?
Yeah.
This is unfathomable. How can you be grateful right now in this moment? And they said that when I recognized how to be grateful for the lessons I was learning, even though there were things I would never want to happen to anybody else, or even though they were unfair and should not have been happening to me, I realized that I could grow so much when I changed my mindset to being grateful for the lessons I was continuing to learn, and that I was being able to have the opportunity, right, to have more lessons, right? So they were at some points grateful for just the breath of air that they were getting, right?
Yeah.
And I think when we can experience that level of gratitude and we can experience that, the beauty of resilience in there, right? Because resilience is a beautiful thing. It helps us to understand how to adapt and grow in those situations, right? Mm-hmm. However impossible they may be. Yeah. And that to me is resilience.
Yeah.
Adapting, learning, and growing.
Yeah, and I agree with you. That's beautiful and it's powerful. And the thing you always speak so well about when you describe things. And so, yes, resilience, I would say, is abstract. However, it is part of the human condition and it's within all of us, right? And I think especially the work that you and I do, like you said, we sit in moments where individuals have experienced some very difficult things, traumas in life. And however, there is this piece that continues to pull them forward. And there are moments maybe where even this individual that you've spoken about may have felt like there was no way out and that they were in this really, really dark place, but to just continue to take a step every day, whatever that looked like, right? Yeah. Eventually brought them into this place of resilience, right? Because it's within all of us, and how we find it is kind of the trick, if you will, in terms of resilience. I'm going to share about an individual who's also experienced many challenges in life, and he's suffered physical ailments. He's had major surgeries. He's had bouts of cancer. Wow. He's recently lost a spouse. Wow. His child incarcerated, and just many things it seemed like in life, right? He would get through this stage and then something else, right? And many of us can relate with that, right? Where we think, oh, here we are, we got out of this, and here we are, we're on to the next great thing. And then life comes at you and there's this other thing that presents itself.
Right.
And,
Right.
he, just as you mentioned about the individual you spoke with, gratitude and faith,
Yeah.
recurrent in his story continuously. This is an individual I continue to talk to, and he is currently still struggling with health issues, and his child is still incarcerated, and he hopes to meet one of his family members whom he's never met, right? And so
Wow.
even with all of that stuff that he's dealt with in his life, he's still excited about or grateful for the opportunity to meet this family member.
Right.
And that's resilience. That's resilience, because even with all of those challenges that he's still, every day he wakes up, right? And he's wearing an oxygen mask, right?
Right.
This is part of his daily routine, but he still gets up and he's grateful and excited to meet this person, and it's his faith, and he's grateful, and he will often say things like, it could be worse, and I know that there are individuals who have it worse, and so I'm not going to complain about this, right? And so, yes, just resilient, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. It's a beautiful moment when, we talk, our pillars are authenticity, well-being, empowerment, right? And there's little things that we do that help us pivot towards that harmony of having empowerment, authenticity, and well-being working together, right? And one of those things is gratitude helps us pivot, right? It gives us this clearer picture of all of a sudden saying, wow,
Yeah.
right? And that feeling of awe, right? And there's some intentionality why we named our podcast Awe because of that, right?
Yes.
It just puts us in this space of just, let's look at everything around us and what we have, right?
Yes.
And how do we make those pivots? And gratitude is one of those pivots that leads us right into adapting, right? And when I think of adapting and resilience, and when we were kind of developing this podcast, I wrote down it's kind of like the game The Floor is Lava, right? Interestingly enough, right? I'm on this, what seems like an island, and I'm on my dad's chair, right? And my brothers are screaming, like, jump to the couch, right? And meanwhile, our parents are distracted by something because they would be yelling at us for jumping on the furniture, right?
Yes.
But, we're jumping over, knocking over the lamps on the way, right? Because we don't want to touch this floor's lava. And our foot brushes onto the floor, and our brothers are screaming, you're in the lava, right? Get out, right? And, I think that speaks to two things, right? We're always looking for where to put our foot next, right?
Yes.
It also is saying how important, if we can find a support system that it's going to scream at us and say, watch out for the lamp. Mom and Dad are going to be mad if we knock it into the lava, right?
Yes.
Or, right, you're going to burn alive. And we have all this imaginary stuff right in our heads. But it seems like it's how we build our perspective into looking for what is the answer versus like, in our house, there was certainly a lot more floor than furniture, right? Right? So, and sometimes if we look at all the barriers, there's certainly a lot more barriers sometimes when we look at it that way versus opportunities.
Absolutely.
But how do we make that pivot? Well, it's gratitude. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, and we may have touched on this throughout the podcast, with barriers and the challenges that we face, because we all face them.
Right.
And we don't know necessarily when they're going to present themselves. But it brings about an opportunity, right? And just being grateful in the sense, right, when you're in it, you're not feeling that gratitude, right? These individuals that we've talked about experiencing those challenges and those traumas, right? Like the individual you spoke about said, I know these things shouldn't have happened, but, right? So now that I can look back on that, I can be grateful. I can see where it's brought me. I know what the opportunities have been. Yeah. And that is resilience.
It is.
It is.
And it's, the next piece of this is growing, right? Adapting and growing.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk beautifully about putting ourselves in this observing piece, right? And we're looking backwards in a sense. And that's a lot of times when we recognize our resilience, and know how to look for it moving forward, right? We've all had those moments. But when we can look at that process of growing, right? And I'm raising children, you've raised some children and still are raising children, right? It just is something we do for a lifetime.
Indeed.
Right? And so often we can be the outside observer looking, and we want to just make everything okay, right? And we know, like, don't make that decision, right?
We
and
see the lava
yes,
that our children are surrounded by.
Right. And we can get so caught up in that we forget to teach them about the opportunities, right?
Absolutely.
Like, watch out for this, watch out for that, watch out for this, watch out for that, right? And then pretty soon they're just like, wow, I mean,
I'm
what's
not
the point?
listening.
Yeah, right. I'm not gonna listen. Yeah, right. And if we, so a parent and like growing a plant, right? If I'm the grower growing the plant, I'm the person putting the plant in the soil and making sure the soil gets enough water and things like that. I'm watching out when the soil dries up so I can put more water into it. I'm making sure it gets sunlight and all those things, right?
Yeah.
And if we can do that in parenting, I think that's so powerful, right? Is looking for what does need the nurturing to help the thing grow, right? Or the person grow. And we do that in therapy as well. But we need to be able to do that with each other too. And most importantly, you need to do that with yourself.
Right. Yeah. The parenting is a great example because, we do. We watch out for our children, and we do that all the time. We're trying to correct and or stop some of those things that we know because we've been there, right? Maybe not exactly, but we've been in similar situations where it was tricky and challenging. And we know they have to kind of go through that, right? Because they are resilient. And how do they learn that they are resilient but for falling into the lava occasionally?
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Just like our clients and just like ourselves, right? Because it's going to happen.
Right.
It is going to happen. But we have to believe that, we are resilient and that we will come back from that.
Right.
And like you said, being in that observant space in terms of, okay, so what have I learned? How can I now apply this to whatever that next step is?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That is growth. Huge growth.
Yeah. And sometimes we do learn the hard way. Funny story about me that I don't think you know, and it is goofy. But I have a scar in the middle of my forehead. It looks like a V.
Okay.
And really where that comes from is my brothers and I think our parents were gone. We were being babysat, actually. We were jumping on the bed, and this thing had 4 brass, corner posts.
Ooh.
And you've all heard it. 3 little monkeys jumping on the bed. One fell off and bumped his head. It was me, right? And, there's blood everywhere, and the babysitter was like, I think they told my older brother, worrying that my brains were falling out because they were scared.
Fired.
Right?
Yeah, what is going on? Yeah.
Right. And so I ended up having to get stitches or whatever. But,
Ooh.
right, you can look back on that and learn what kind of resilience that made for me and everybody involved in the situation, of course. But sometimes we need to help people uncover their resilient and just remind them that, wow, you are resilient, right? And remember, it comes through nurturing. And that means if I'm someone helping someone else uncover I need to be nurturing. Yeah. If I'm stuck in a spot, because we will get stuck in spots where it seems impossible, remember to nurture yourself. Yes. Right?
Yeah.
And what does that look like, you ask? What does it look like to nurture yourself?
Just, this is key because even going in to see a therapist, right? So that's what we're kind of talking about, is seeking a place and a way to ask for help and to find your authentic self. And so within that and nurturing yourself, right? Because ultimately that's part of your well-being and taking care of yourself, but reminding yourself in this nurturing piece that it is you that's taking those steps, picking up the phone to make the appointment, whatever that is, right? And so even though that seems very basic, that's a way to nurture yourself, is to be like, you know what? I made the phone call. It is me. I'm taking the step, right?
Yeah.
So even if it is something as basic as, I made an appointment, remind yourself that you did that.
Right.
That
right.
is something that maybe you would not have done, right? Weeks
Absolutely.
prior, a year ago, whatever that looks like. So that's growth. That's
Absolutely.
resilience, right? And that's part of nurturing yourself. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's the uncovering of our authentic self, right? Yeah. Because at the core of it, and what we try to remind ourselves and you as the listener, is that at the core of being our authentic self is a human, right? And that human is fragile. Mm-hmm. It's going to make mistakes. It's going to learn from those mistakes, but it's also really resilient, right? Mm-hmm. And that's empowering, and that builds well-being. And I think we should be in awe of ourselves.
Yeah, because it's awesome.
Yeah. That's
awesome. Yes.
It is.
Yes. No pun intended, but yes, a pun intended.
Right. Indeed.
Yes.
Indeed. Yes. So resilience and our experience, how do we bring that alive, right? How do we make that pivot? What are the tools out there? One of the tools that we always talk about is journaling, right? Mm-hmm. Because we get it out of our head, we put it on paper, and we can see, like, this is how resilient I am, especially if we go back and read our journals.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And journaling is powerful. It, just like you said, right, it's in a place where you can go back and you can see how things, again, have changed over time, right? Where I started to where I am now. Wow, there's growth there. I am resilient. I can do this. Right. Even though there was some things maybe that were very difficult, or that I didn't understand, or that I didn't plan for. Because the truth is, again, we can't plan for a lot of these things that just happened. There's no way that could ever happen, right? We try, we spend our days planning, we have a routine, but stuff sneaks in there, and there's surprise, here I am. So, but journaling is amazing. It's a great tool. The other thing about resilience in our experience is that we can then share that with somebody else, whether it be our children or a friend, as you alluded to, right? That support of your brothers, right? If we've been there or we've overcome anything or something, we can share that. Our experience is valid. It is a way to let others know that they too can overcome and be who it is that they are.
Right. And there's power in sharing stories, and that's why, we kind of do what we do here in sharing stories and experience and education, because sometimes we're not in a spot ready to go to therapy, make that commitment. But if we hear about it, maybe we're more apt to make that decision to go to therapy or wherever it may be to get some help, right? Yeah. But when you can share your story, and I've grown as a professional hearing my clients' stories.
Absolutely.
And that's really the best schooling I've ever had.
It really is.
Was from my clients. Yeah.
It's amazing. And I've had clients share things that, like you said, your jaw, like if there was a vision, right? It would be your jaw hitting the floor with some of the things that these individuals have endured, right?
Right.
But through that experience, their experiences, we as professionals, as human beings, right, we grow as well.
Absolutely.
And so that experience, again, their resilience, right, is continuing, and it is helping us even as professionals.
Right. And there's certainly a lot to be learned with resilience. And resilience is one of those things that it's not a goal that you just get there and you got it. Right. It's a
I'm sorry.
thing.
No.
Right. Just like gratitude and many of the things we talk about, it's a continual practice.
Yes. Always. Lifelong. Yes. Yeah.
Right.
But to remember that you are, right? It's a springboard. You've used that term, so I'm stealing that from Josh, but it is a springboard to remind yourself, okay, I've done that. I can do that again.
Absolutely.
Am I there all the time? No, but I know what it's like. I know that it's somewhere around in the near vicinity.
Right. No
So,
kidding.
yes.
Yeah. Okay, and I think that sort of wraps us up for our talking points for today, but we really want you to be in awe of yourself, right?
Absolutely. And we believe in you.
Yeah.
And you are resilient. No matter how you're feeling, you are resilient, and you can do it.
You are.
Yeah. So that's all for today. Join us next time as we discuss burnout. This is Lashana.
And Josh.
Stay authentic, well, and empowered.